What's everybody? What's up, everybody? I'm out here in nature, trying to enjoy my day, you know? Just getting some oneness with some rocks and some trees, you know what I mean? I've been pondering over the message that I want to put out during this video. I don't know how to put it out. I mean, I could just dump information on you guys if you'd like, but I've done that before and it's not well received. My glasses are crooked. One second. How's that look? Still crooked. Okay. Are these crooked? Could be. In fact, yes. Okay. Well, I found the error. Must have sat on these at some time. Don't break. Okay, well. We're just gonna run with it. They're crooked glasses, deal with it. Suck it up. Yeah. So the message I wanted to put out today pertains to Genesis. Genesis 1 in particular. My fear is that a lot of people have never read the Bible. And by the Bible, I mean the actual Bible, not like the KJV or NIV or any of that nonsense. The original Bible, the actual Bible in Hebrew, and Aramaic and Greek and all that good stuff. And I know what your argument might be. It's, you know, I've heard it before. You know, I don't have time to learn 3 languages, much less, you know, ancient languages that are only scholarly at this point. And I hear you. And to that, I present the counterpoint of it's 2025, and there is a word-for-word translation on the internet. And you really don't have an excuse. The only excuse that is acceptable is that you don't have internet access. But if you don't have internet access, then how are you watching this video? How am I even talking to you? I use Bible Hub. I'm sure that there's other resources out there, but they have a one-for-one, you know, word-for-word translation. And I understand that, you know, there are idioms and things like that that don't translate in a one-for-one. I get that. But we're in Genesis at this point, and there really aren't any idioms as far as I can tell. So my issue is actually larger than just Genesis, but it originates in Genesis. See, in the beginning of Genesis, in Genesis 1, it states very clearly that the Elohim, on the first day, the Elohim, you know, did everything that they did. My issue with the word Elohim is that outside of the context of the Bible, that word 100% of the time is translated to lowercase g gods, plural. For example, if you were to say the Greek gods in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew, you would use the word Elohim. And yet, for some reason, inside Judaism and Christianity, the word Elohim is also accepted as being a singular version of the word God, pointing towards the supreme God, which, okay, maybe. But then you zoom out a little bit and you start looking at the actions of the Elohim. You know, it was Christ that said, "You will know a tree by its fruits." And then you go read Genesis, and you just see that YHVH, however you pronounce that. I argue it's pronounced Yehovah. Otherwise, where did the word Jehovah for Jehovah's Witness, where'd that come from? It's clearly not Jehovah with a J, because the J doesn't exist in Hebrew. It's more of a hard Y sound, like a YD sound, like a... J's close enough, I guess, but it's not accurate to 100%. But it doesn't really matter. The point is that you have this being, well, in Genesis 1, alright, so you have this being called the Elohim, which if we're going to translate that directly, it translates to gods. So you have the gods, plural, creating the earth in 6 days and then resting on the seventh. But also there was not really any creation that happened, if you're really going to read the book. It's, you know, at the very beginning, before the first day, it says that the spirit of the Elohim was hovering over the surface of the waters, which means that there was waters before any creation took place. And then on the second day, they separated the waters from the waters and created the atmosphere, the firmament, whatever you want to call it, the atmosphere. I'm sorry, on the first day it was just a light-dark cycle, the day-night cycle, without any sun or moon or anything like that, no stars. It was just a disembodied day-night cycle. And then the second day it was the waters from the waters creating the atmosphere. And then the third day it was separating the waters from the earth to create dry ground. And also on that day it was seeded with vegetation. So far no creation had really happened. You could make the argument that plant life was created, but you could also make the argument that maybe it already existed. I think I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead too far with my argument. There was terraforming for sure. I'm not arguing that there wasn't terraforming. I'm not arguing that it was feats beyond what a human can do, a singular human can do. I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing that it was not God-level feat. God-level feat poofs things into existence from nothing, and in Genesis, we don't see that happening. We see terraforming happening. You could make the argument that on the fourth day, when the sun, moon, and stars were created, or put into place, that those were poofed into existence. And to that I say, okay, maybe, but then let's look at the energy scale that had happened so far. So on the first day you had a formless, flooded planet out in the middle of nowhere, and we know it's out in the middle of nowhere because it didn't have any light or dark, it didn't have a sun, didn't have a moon, didn't have any stars, so it's clearly out on the edge of space, out where there is, you know, very little of anything else. And then the first day there was an artificial light system put into place. You could say that was just the light emanating from the Elohim. Sure, fine, whatever. And then the second day was the atmosphere, the separating the waters from the waters. You know, that's an impressive feat, but it's not a God-level feat. That's like that's a team of engineers and scientists level feat. It's organized. It's not small, but it's not poofing things into existence from nothing. And then same with day 3, where you separate the waters from the ground. I mean, it's impressive. I can't do it. You can't do it. But it's not God level. It's not poofing things into existence. So we have this level of energy required. You know, there's a light system, and then terraforming the atmosphere, and then terraforming the land. They're impressive, but they're not God-level feats. And then on the day 4, you have the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. And so now we have a massive orders and orders and orders of magnitude jump in energy. On the 4th day, he creates the entire existence of all the stars in the universe, when all he had done prior to them is separating water from water and water from ground, and creating a disembodied light source. I don't know about you, but that just doesn't fit. It doesn't sit logically. You have this massive spike in energy required on the fourth day, and then on the fifth day he goes back to just creating plants, or not plants, but animals, fish, birds, beasts, bugs, stuff like that. And so the energy scale just doesn't sit right with me. And I think anybody else who would actually give an honest look, it would not sit right with you as well, because the Bible was written at a point in history when people didn't have a clear understanding of physics and like the energy required in order to do these things. But now we do. I mean, we still don't have a full understanding of the energy required, but we have a much more accurate. And the energy required to poof stars and just stars. We're not even looking at the sun and the moon, just stars. The amount of energy it requires to poof all of the stars into existence is astronomical in comparison to everything else. It's nonsense. I'm sorry, it's nonsense. I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. So that's Genesis 1. And then you have Genesis 2, which goes into... it's the same story as Genesis 1, just kind of from a different point of view. So Genesis 1 was from like a 10,000 foot view, get a full view of what's going on. And then Genesis 2 kind of zooms in and gives you more detail in specific areas. And then in Genesis 2, it's where YHVH is first introduced. And he's introduced as an Elohim. The argument that Christians and Jews make that YHVH is the Most High God, it just doesn't sit right, because you have this being, so the Most High God must be all-loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful by definition. And we see YHVH setting Adam up in the garden with the very thing he told him not to do, without the knowledge without the knowledge in order to make an educated decision. It seems very manipulative. It seems very much like Adam was set up for failure. There's an analogy that I can make. If I were to set up a room full of toys, and then in the middle of that room put a lit candle, and put a toddler in that room and told the toddler that they can play with anything in that room, just don't play with the candle. And then I walk away, and then I come back sometime later and I find that the child had burned themselves. Who's at fault there? It's not the child. And that's exactly what YHVH did to Adam. Adam didn't have human level intellect at that point. He had not eaten the fruit. He did not receive the knowledge of good and evil. The dude was walking around naked and didn't even realize it. He was not human level intellect at this point. And if YHVH is in fact the all-loving God, where was he? Where was he when the serpent was conversating with Eve? Why did he not step in and go, no, that's not accurate. That's not what I said. That's not what happened. Where was he? Was he there and did nothing? Or was he not there? And if he wasn't there, that's not very all-knowing. And if he was there and did nothing, that's not very all-loving. I'm sorry, if he wasn't there, that's not very all-present. If he was there and did nothing, that's not very all-loving. There's a logical flaw. If you're going to attribute YHVH to being the Most High God, there's a logical flaw there, and I need you guys to see that. Adam and Eve were set up. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, Adam and Eve were set up, and I need you guys to see that. I need you guys to break through your cognizant dissonance and see that. That was not an act of an all-loving God. That was an act of a manipulative lesser God. YHVH is not the Almighty. Christ himself said, "You will know a tree by its fruits." And then we look at YHVH and see what he did. He set Adam and Eve up to fail. Now, I know what the Christians are going to say. Well, he sent Jesus to die on the cross and to fix the problem. First off, no, he didn't. YHVH is not associated with Jesus. I don't know where you guys get that. Jesus never once referenced YHVH as being his father. He referenced the Almighty, the Most High. And my argument is that the YHVH is absolutely not that. The Most High God doesn't show up until much, much later in the Bible. The first time he's mentioned is when, and he's not even present in the scene, he's just mentioned, he's referenced. The first time he's referenced properly is when Abram, I think he was Abram at the time, when Abram came into contact with the king of Salem, Melchizedek. Melchizedek was a king and priest to the Most High God, who then blessed Abraham. But up until that point, the Most High God did not make an appearance in the Bible. I might be wrong. I could be wrong. It might have been at Noah. I'll need to double check on that. Another data point that proves that YHVH is not all loving and therefore not the Most High God is Babel. Like it's painfully obvious that he's not the Most High God at that point. So the story of Babel, this is after the flood. You have a group of people who came together and decided that they were going to get over their bullshit and start working together and build a city. And so they did that. And then YHVH heard about it. And this is what the Bible says. YHVH heard about it and decided that he needed to come down and look at it. That doesn't sound very all-knowing to me. It sounds very finite to some degree. And when he came down and he saw it, he saw that they were working together, and he feared. He feared that they could do anything. The Bible flat out says that he was concerned that they could do anything. And so then he shut them down. They were doing nothing wrong. They were working together. They were collaborating. And he shut them down because they were collaborating. That's not the act of the Most High God. It's not. Jehovah is not the Most High God. Jews are deceived because, well, they're horribly deceived because they fell for Jehovah, but then the Messiah came and they didn't even recognize the Messiah. So Jews are horribly confused, and Christians, the average Christian, has no concept of what they're even talking about because they've never read the Bible. They're attributing to God things that God didn't do. And it's disgusting. It's frankly disgusting, and it shows a lack of interest on their part, and a lack of intellect, and a lack of critical thinking skills. Yeah. Now, don't confuse me. I have not talked bad. I have not talked against the Messiah once. I'm talking down against YHVH. YHVH is a lying piece of shit and a manipulator, and none of us should be bending our knee to him. He's garbage. You should be bending your knee to the Most High God. Yeah. Well, that's all I got to say. I hope you learned something. I'm sure a lot of you guys aren't even going to listen to this, and even more won't take to heart what I just said to you. But that's not my problem. I wish you the best. Love the Most High. Love your neighbor. Do the will of God. That's not Jehovah. Peace out. I love you all.